So obviously the first thing you gotta do is get the cover off, and if you want to paint the back of it or the grips, I mean you can do that too, as long as they're not rubber. It just has to be hard plastic because paint will not stick to rubber. And the first thing you want to do is sand it. 600 grit is good. If you're going to be covering the whole thing with paint, use 600 grit. If, say, you're just doing a splatter on it and maybe you're not going to paint the whole thing with color, like I did on the gaming mice, I would use an 800 grit, because the 600 grit, the scratches might show through the clear coat that you use at the end of it. You can get 600 grit in an automotive store. You want to sand the whole thing really well to make the paint stick. If you don't sand it, the paint won't stick. And use a little bit of soapy water will help, because when you use a really fine sandpaper like this, the dust will clog up the sandpaper really quick, and the water stops that from happening. So next you just want to clean it off good. You can just use soap and water, it's fine. That'll get rid of the sanding dust, and then it'll get rid of any grease from your fingers. You need to wear rubber gloves when you do it. You just let it sit for like 30 seconds to a minute. Let it eat away any grease that's on there, and then wipe it off. It's nice if you have something like this to hold it with. Just took a chopstick and then put it in the screw hole and then taped it on there. Drilled a hole in this piece of 2x4. It would sit on there. You can also just hold it with your hand. It's a lot more convenient. And a great kind of paint that I would recommend for painting plastic is this stuff. It says that it's meant for plastic, and it's also a paint plus primer, so you don't need to use like a separate primer before you put this stuff on. It covers really well and sticks really well to plastic. A lot of different colors you can get at Walmart or Home Depot. But since I'm going to be using this fluorescent paint today, which isn't really meant for plastic, I'm going to put some of this stuff on it first, and I'm going to do it in white. These fluorescent colors look amazing. They have like 4 different colors they use in Rust-Oleum. Got it at Home Depot. But if you put it over black, they don't come out as strong, so I'm going to be using like this in a white primer first. And then just right before you go ahead and paint, you might want to wipe it off or blow it off with some air real quick first, just to make sure you get any dust off that's gotten on it. I can see a lot of dust has gotten on this before. And you just want to shake the can up for a good, pretty much like a minute before you spray it. Now I'm just going to put a light coat on. I'm going to make sure to get all the edges first. And you just want to look at the instructions on the back of the can. One just says right here, apply 2 or more coats waiting a few minutes apart. So just put a timer on for like 5 minutes, and then put a second light coat on. So you got a little bug that's stuck in the paint right there before it dried. If you have any crap in it, like dust or bugs, just take it like a little piece of 1000 grit, or if you're gonna repaint again, actually you could just use the same 600 grit. Just really lightly sand it down. Just be really gentle with it, because the paint's still gonna be kind of soft. Just wipe the dust off it again. Doesn't really matter if that color is still there, because I'm gonna paint over it again. But say like if that was your final color and you're about to put clear coat on, you just want to put like some more of that final color. And the recoat, it'll tell you top coat. The top coat just refers to the color you're putting over it within 1 hour after 24 hours. So you want to do it within under an hour, because it starts to get a skin on it after an hour. So then you got to wait another 24 hours. And if you end up having to wait 24 hours, I would sand it down lightly again before you put another coat on to make sure it bonds properly, because right now the paint isn't fully dry, so it'll get like a chemical bond between the 2 different paints when you apply it, so you don't have to do any sanding. It's a lot easier to do multiple really light coats. Make sure you don't put it on too thick, because it's really easy to get drips. I'm just gonna look at it real close, see if there's any little spots that aren't fully covered. Now since I'm gonna tape over this and do some masking to where I want the blue to stay, I'm gonna set a timer and wait 30 minutes before I put the tape on, because I want to make it get pretty dry before I put the tape over it so it doesn't mess it up. But I also want to be able to do the next coat of paint before that 1 hour window is up. And I'm also gonna go bring this and leave it in the sun to speed up the drying time. It's only been about 10 or 15 minutes, but you can just test it out. And it looks fine, it's not messing up the paint at all. So I want to keep gloves on when I do this to keep grease from my fingers off of the controller. I'm just gonna go ahead and just put the tape on in spots where I want the blue paint. I'm gonna like press it on there really good with my fingernails to make sure it sticks really well. Take an X-Acto knife, cut out the spots where I want to keep the blue paint. And there's like a little bit of texture, like right there. Just because the paint is still pretty soft and wet. I was grabbing it kind of hard. I just take the 1000 grit and just lightly sand it down to get rid of that texture. Actually, I messed up. I was gonna put the pink on, but then I kind of realized that the blue underneath is gonna affect how that pink looks. Better put some white over it again, especially since there's still white here. So the pink here is gonna look different from there. That blue will probably show through. I probably just should have done the blue first and then put the white on, but it's alright. So I don't know, this paint's kind of crappy. I don't know if I just piled on like the primer and stuff like too much and it cracked underneath, but maybe it would have worked better with no primer. But I don't know, I showed it to my friends and they thought it looked cool, so maybe I'll just kind of leave it like that. I was gonna put white spatter over it. But yeah, so this fluorescent paint definitely just, it looks like it only cracked where the blue was. So if you're gonna use the fluorescent paint, I would just say like, maybe even just put it on the bare plastic first, or just keep the primer like really thin under it, because I think it just, maybe just the chemicals and the fluorescent didn't react well with the blue, or obviously if you like the cracks like this, then just put a different color on really thick under their fluorescent, then it'll crack like that. So for the clear coat, I would definitely recommend this stuff. You gotta order it online. You have to pay like $10 shipping, but it's definitely worth it. I've used a couple other brands of clear coat and they're horrible. I tried a Rust-Oleum one, it just dripped really bad. I tried one from a auto store, it just dried really dull. This stuff comes out amazing. You can put it on really thick. It's insanely durable. I put it on the headlights of my car, you know, car goes 70 miles an hour on the freeway, bugs hitting it. 2 months later, the paint looks fine. I would wait about a half hour for this to dry before putting on the clear coat. With clear coat, you want to do passes like that, where you overlap each time. Practice with it if you're not used to using clear coat. Just practice painting on something with it first. You want to get it on thick, but not too thick where you get drips. And I'm going to put it on really thin first, just to make sure there's no problems with it. And actually you want to go ahead and spray the edges first. And then I like to cover it up with something between coats. Clear coat's really sticky, and if you get bugs or crap in it before you put the final coat on, it can kind of ruin it. So I would definitely recommend one of these respirators, especially when spraying this clear. Pretty nasty shit. This stuff says to wait 10 to 15 minutes between coats. It says to even put like 4 or 5 coats on with this. I'm just gonna do 2 thin ones and then put the third one on real thick, I think. I'm gonna put the final coat on, the third coat, put it on really thick. You don't really have to put it on super thick, but the thicker you put this stuff on, it'll give it like a really, really glossy look. It'll look really nice. Ideally, the hotter it is when you paint, the better, but it's still not too cold out. You can really smash this stuff on there really thick. When it dries, it'll dull out a little bit, but you just gotta be careful so you don't get drips like on the side. But like on the flat parts, you can just put it on there real thick. So if it's flat, it's not gonna drip. Here's a little trick I'm gonna use to help it dry faster. I'll just leave it in there for like 10 minutes, let it bake. Just be careful with the hairdryer. Don't dry it on clear coat directly, because then you might end up blowing a lot of dust into it. Here's the finished product right here. The clear coat actually came out a little dull, with quite a bit of texture this time. It might have been because I forced dry it with the hairdryer. I left it on for like an hour, I actually forgot about it, but I'm not happy with how the clear coat came out. You can just like wait 24 hours, sand it all down with 1000 grit, and then just spray it again with more clear coat.